Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Tech, and I'm just gonna quickly check out if my streams are actually all working. It says in OBS that it's supposed to work. I don't know, Google Chrome doesn't update it right now in in YouTube Studio. I don't know why. Yeah, like, does this work? Really hope it does, otherwise I'm gonna look pretty silly. I'm gonna check my own channel really quickly. I know this is riveting content. Yeah, it's supposed to work. It's supposedly streaming on my iPad too. Amazing. Yeah, wow. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Tech, much sooner back than expected because Apple's surprise week of announcements continues. It's a few hours late, obviously, after the HomePod announcement, but it's still in less than 24 hours, which is better than the usual 2 months that it used to take me to react to something. Regardless, what I would love to do right now is to react to the HomePod and really discuss it a little bit. Now, it isn't going to be an hour-long video, obviously. This is just one product. But it's very important for you to understand why I feel that this HomePod is weird, strange, a little odd, but fundamentally still a good device, especially for those who don't have an original HomePod. So let's start with what we have on Apple's homepage. Now, similar to the MacBook Pro, we do have a film, as Apple calls it, a short introductory video, basically. And yeah, it is not the same style as the MacBook Pro, but it can, just like the MacBook Pro video, it suggested it was ripped from a much larger keynote that likely had the PSVR 2, I'm sorry, Apple's mixed reality, augmented reality headset included. At least that was my perception of it. Let me know in the comments or on Twitter or anywhere else where you can find me if you agree with that statement. Regardless, there is actually a pretty lengthy learn more site for the new HomePod. They call it the all new HomePod. They greatly accentuate its audio capabilities. And I will talk about it, reacting to the things they basically advertise about it. But I will, in the end, explain to you why this is not quite a rant, but definitely a very strong reaction from somebody who really wanted to get a second generation HomePod. So they're advertising the intelligent assistant part of it, that it works seamlessly with Apple devices, and the fact that now we're to the mesh fabric, basically. So profound sound available in midnight and white, $299. They're saying it's now recycled mesh, which is quite awesome, but it looks very similar to the original HomePod. Which isn't bad. The original HomePod came out in 2018, which for high quality audio is not that old, but then again, the HomePod did have a somewhat weird history, basically, with getting discounted and then getting discontinued, and then we got just the HomePod Mini. The HomePod Mini is also going to be a little part of this discussion. So overall, it's a little weird, but it's kind of interesting. So I'm not fully angry because fundamentally this is just HomePod, but you will see where I'm not so happy. So they call it a powerhouse of a speaker with Apple engineered audio, advanced software. So, what do they call it? They say it has room-filling oomph. As somebody who has the original HomePod, if this is even 90-95% there, I'm all in. They say it has a 20mm diaphragm. They have a bass EQ mic to tune for low frequency. It offers super clean bass. Again, as somebody who has the original HomePod, supposedly the woofer is pretty much the same here. And yeah, boom, basically. It also hits the high notes. It has 5 beam-forming tweeters, which is where we get to our first point of contention, which is that the original HomePod had 7. So kind of supposedly more tuned to fire in every direction. However, when you compare this a little bit to like the internal layout of the original, it does look like a new architecture for it. Like those are now facing a slightly upwards, which from what I understand after talking to a few audio engineers, that this is better for tweeters, while the previous ones were basically facing directly forward, which again might not be in the ideal position where you are, while if they are facing upwards, they will basically always deliver somewhat of the intentioned effect. But then again, if somebody of you is an audio engineer, again, my interactions were very brief, mostly Twitter stuff, and I'm certainly not one myself, please let me know. So again, so the crystal clear vocals. Again, if this is anywhere close, like I understand it is like less tweeters, but then again, the raw materials to make like high quality audio equipment have all gone up in price, and if it's slightly rearranged to deliver basically the same thing with slightly less, I'm all in. Like the price is decent. We will talk more about the price later, but it's not bad by any means. Yes, they offer now spatial audio, which again, it doesn't really matter in my opinion that much. It's like already with like Dolby Atmos and everything else, like audio quality is not where I'm really concerned about. It does optimize acoustics in real time, which is what the original HomePod did as well, which is basically it listening to itself, and then based on that, it kind of creates an internal layout of the room where you're in. It understands at what height it's positioned, like if there is anything substantially in the way, and then it optimizes its sound profile for that. How much that works, I've repositioned like my original HomePod in my living room a little bit, and it usually resulted in different sound, not just from me sitting obviously differently to the HomePod now, but also just in general it adapts differently to create this like fully immersive sound experience. Yes, so this is basically that, tuned to the room. Apple keeps advertising Apple Music. Similar to the original HomePod, it should be mentioned that this is basically a Wi-Fi audio speaker and an AirPlay audio speaker, an AirPlay 2 audio speaker. So this isn't obvious. Obviously, it supports other apps as well, like everything that now also like works with Siri and stuff. So it is not Apple Music limited like it used to be. Basically, over the years there has been a lot of support, but overall you will get the best experience if you're in the Apple ecosystem, especially now with like Dolby Atmos support in Apple Music, spatial audio and all of that. And this is an important part. So they're even more dynamic. As a duo, you can create a stereo pair and then amplify obviously whatever you're listening to. That is very important because part of it is also Apple advertising as a basically home theater setup together with the latest Apple TV. Now, what is great about the latest Apple TV is eARC, and eARC is the audio return channel. So if your TV supports it, which most recent TVs do, and even some older ones, but make sure that you put it in the right port, which is it gets the audio from the TV, no matter the source, and then over AirPlay gives it to the HomePod. For example, how I use it primarily, like my LG C1 is connected to 2 to 3 sources. One is my Apple TV, the other is my PlayStation, and sometimes I used to have a switch, basically. And what the Apple TV enables is the PlayStation sends a sound to my TV through the HDMI cable, and the Apple TV receives it because it's in the audio return channel HDMI port, and then it transfers that audio to my HomePod. So this is a feature that works with the HomePod Mini, the original HomePod, and now the HomePod, let's call it 2023 edition. So this is amazing, but it does work with the previous model. However, if you do have a previous model, like the original HomePod Biggie, or if you have one HomePod Mini and think of pairing it up, the new HomePod only pairs with another new HomePod. So a 2023 HomePod needs a 2023 HomePod to create this kind of stereo pair. A 2018 HomePod needs another 2018 HomePod, and a HomePod Mini needs another HomePod Mini. That is a little sucky for me, and this is part of the rant, but I understand why it's happening. I'm not actually angry with Apple about this. Like, they do have a slightly different sound profile, the hardware is subjectively different, and it does have a different chip. So I can understand why it wouldn't be fully tuned. Now, some people have come at me, like on Twitter, for example, saying that like, yeah, but you can like pair everything through AirPlay too. Like, why doesn't Apple allow that? First of all, this is still allowed. So you can basically have all your devices play the same crap. And it sounds horrible. Like, I thought maybe like I used to like pair like a sound bar and my TV speakers with the HomePod for a little bit, and everybody who listened to it basically wanted to murder me. So after a week I gave it up, and my ears never felt happy after I gave it up. So I hope to get some kind of better stereo experience, but I basically had speakers shouting at each other. Now, for obviously for them working as a stereo pair, I've heard amazing things about it, and I've heard a stereo pair of the original HomePods once or twice, and it is quite impressive. But consider, if you do have an original HomePod, something that costs you $350 or $300, yeah, you will need two new ones to create a stereo pair. Or if you had two previous ones, then my recommendation will actually be, unless you want another stereo pair, this isn't worth an upgrade. This is very important. And this is similar to how a lot of high-end audio equipment works. If you have something fantastic from 4 or 5 years ago, you have literally no reason to upgrade in 4 or 5 years. So I am not upgrading my original HomePod. This is slightly spoiler alarmy here. However, if this had been compatible with my HomePod, then I would have bought one, right? I would have created a stereo pair out of the original and out of this one. But while $700, 700 euros, it costs 350 euros versus $300 for one HomePod. While that doesn't necessarily break the bank to get to 700 euros, just out of principle, I refuse to like try to find a new place for my HomePod for now. And there are some other factors that I don't like about this HomePod that I will mention soon. So, the cinematic experience is advertised, the whole music. Again, as I said, there are no new sources. For example, Apple News is even supported. It's a short list. It's supposed to be more from what I understand, but like Pandora especially, like, yeah, a couple of podcast apps are supported, and of course Apple's own podcast app as well. Very important, the integration with the overall Apple ecosystem works quite well. You now do have like basically bring your device close to the HomePod and transfer it, or the other way around here, it's just like transfer to iPhone. So the Apple ecosystem integration, in my opinion, is really unchallenged in comparison to what most other companies are delivering. So they're obviously advertising that data is safe and private here. High IQ, haha, very funny. Yeah, so Siri. Now, Siri is the second best voice assistant in my opinion. However, it's so far behind Google Assistant that it's basically not worth mentioning. And who knows what will happen with Cortana now that with ChatGPT and all that stuff. But my opinion, and from my experience is I've actually used a couple of Google speakers, mostly for like internal tech review stuff. I wasn't doing videos back then. Is that for like a lot of like homey stuff, like timers, reminders, all that stuff, it kind of works better on the HomePod. Maybe it's because all the other speakers that I used to have, like especially were like the minis, basically, had maybe crappy microphones in comparison to the HomePod. But yeah, like that kind of stuff. Like I don't have obviously a door lock that is Siri enabled, but everything else in those tasks I do. Especially like I often say, just like play a podcast of my choosing. For example, I'm a big Morning Joe fan. So yeah, this does work well with Siri, and I know Siri gets a lot of crap. I do think for the kinds of tasks that you're most likely to be doing on a HomePod, it's actually quite good. But who knows? Maybe this is worse. This, for example, also has fewer microphones than before. So it has 4 versus 6 microphones. But then again, we will get to that. Now, it does work with Matter, and it works obviously with all the most relevant stuff, like with automation. So you can create like shortcuts and stuff. Very important now, and this is where we will briefly talk about the HomePod Mini, and that is temperature and humidity, because both the new HomePod Big E and the old HomePod Mini, so there's no new hardware from what we understand, support temperature and humidity. And this can feed directly data to your other like Matter and Siri compatible home devices, like a thermostat. Maybe like the HomePod is in another room and can get the data for it, or maybe just in general you have like a space heater that like works easily. Or maybe you just want the data set, right? Like maybe you get the data, and then like, for example, I myself have like a dumb space heater because I needed one really quickly for the winter, and ended up buying the one that was actually available. So if I were to get this HomePod, I would have data on temperature and humidity, and then I could base my decisions on that. For example, sound recognition is also new. It is part of basically the S7 chip functionality. The HomePod securely listens for smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. If one of these sounds is identified, you will get a notification on iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch. That is very interesting, and in my opinion, very good. Like Apple's support for accessibility features in general has been pretty good. And I don't know, maybe like you have a smoke sensor that like goes off, but its speaker is like really bad for some reason, and then the HomePod might hear it, but maybe you in your bedroom cannot. So this is still a good thing, in my opinion, to have that support. How it works with other sound recognition features across accessibility, for example, what we have on iOS is also like there is a host of other sounds that can be recognized, from what I understand. And how that works remains to be seen. Again, this launches on the 3rd of February, so there's still a lot we will just see in general testing. Next is Matter compatibility, as I just said, about like working with home accessories, and this is obviously with HomeKit, and then Matter is like the overarching new standard that is also backed by Google, Amazon, etc. So yeah, everyone gets the messages. Yeah, like they do have the intercom feature basically. So if you have like several HomePods, or if you say something on one, you can make it sound on the others. I'm sorry guys, I'm getting a little like yeah, I'm trying to not get riled up before I get to the actual stuff that makes me a little angry, and it's the kind of stuff that I really dislike about Apple sometimes, and it's the kind of stuff that I don't want to see in a new device that I personally really wanted to own. So again, I apologize if this is too bright. This is personally too bright for me. I'm sitting in front of a 50-inch TV. Okay, so the new HomePod is $299. It does have high excursion woofers, 5 beamforming tweeter arrays. Once again, that is in comparison to 7 on the previous one. It supports spatial audio and room sensing. The HomePod Mini with its like one speaker basically does not need that. It is stereo capable, but only with itself, and it has obviously multi-room audio through AirPlay 2. They support Siri. They do have now the same chip, so a lot of functionality differences will be basically dependent on just their different like feature set through audio. So they do support Siri and voice recognition, and there's a smart home hub. They do have sound recognition. They both have temperature and humidity sensors, and as Apple advertises them as private and secure. Now, when we go to tech specs, we do have Midnight and White. It looks pretty much identical to the Space Gray, so let's see if that's actually different. Now, this is lighter than the previous one. The previous one was 5.5 pounds. This is 5.16. So yeah, again, we already mentioned that. The touch controls, we now have like essentially, whereas with the original HomePod, we only had like a portion of the upper glass that became your volume controls. Now the whole thing lights up. Kind of would have been interesting if Apple would have put a display there, but we got what we got. It's basically not better in any real way. It's just looks a little nicer. So I have no idea why the website did that right now, but it should still work. It's interesting because Apple doesn't even really like put the S7 chip, which is what it is inside and what is what powers the Apple Watch Series 7, so not even the Series 8, is what powers this HomePod. And this is where we get to mini rant, and where we will also get to 9 to 5 Mac. I believe they had that. So we're gonna look that up quickly. Yeah, they should be talking about the HomePod more. Apple TV Plus announcements, we got a little bit of that too today. So everybody who wants to know, like, we get a new Ted Lasso season in the spring, so that is kind of delightful. Okay, so let's compare it to the original, and which is where I get angry. The original HomePod featured an A8 chip. Now that is overkill for a smart speaker, probably still until today, and probably the reason why it basically got continuous software support. Again, you can see they're pretty much like identical in like their audio capabilities. When we look at more, however, we will find some BS basically. Now, one good thing, like as I said, there is the handover feature, so the HomePod 2 does have the U1 chip to do so. So this isn't just based on like Bluetooth estimating proximity, this is actual like proximity understanding. Now in terms of Bluetooth, it is the same old standard system, the original HomePod and the HomePod Mini. Obviously it shares a lot with the HomePod Mini. It does have over it has Thread and Matter support, and everything else is like sound recognition. Yeah, the new chip is a little smarter. I'm actually not sure if the A8 wouldn't be capable of it with enough like oomph, but who knows. Like the temperature and humidity sensors, that's understandable, that's built in versus not built in. But this is where we get to where I get a little angry. And this has nothing probably to do with the end user experience for most people. But to create a device in 2023 with 802.11n, now for just for good understanding, 802.11 AC is not Wi-Fi 6. This has been actually, I've been really tired today. I've tried to respond to people on Twitter. And I've actually mixed that up myself because I haven't used those terms for a while. 802.11 AC is Bluetooth, is Wi-Fi 5. It's not Wi-Fi 6. 802.11n is what we would now call retrospectively as Wi-Fi 4. That is mind-bogglingly old. Like, I mean, yes, it's not B or G, basically Bluetooth 3 and 2, and it does have like enough theoretical bandwidth at 600 megabits per second for like to just deliver the audio it needs. It obviously is enough for the HomePod mini, but my god, this should have been not simply AC, but AX, which is Wi-Fi 6, which is what is in the latest Apple TV 4K. But also, you know where it also is? In the Mac Mini, where it's actually better, because it is AX Wi-Fi 6, but it is the improved Wi-Fi 6E standard with 6 gigahertz support. Now, I do not expect 6 gigahertz support here. I believe that stability should be the top priority for this device, so it will likely be fine using the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz standards, even though it would have been cool to maybe turn off 2.4 gigahertz, right? Even if it would work still with 5 gigahertz, I would want like the best speed for .11n. I'm getting so freaking angry. I'm sorry, guys. The problem here is not with the fact that I believe that this is woefully insufficient. My problem is that this is unnecessary. Now, they could have used the Series 8 chip, the S8 basically, and then it would have been Bluetooth 5.3, but the Wi-Fi capabilities are still the same. I'm gonna look that up very quickly, the Apple Watch Series 8. I'm sorry, I went here to do that on 9 to 5 Mac instead of Apple. I don't know, like my browser for some reason doesn't work as intended. Just gonna go to apple.com. So the Apple Watch, I'm gonna go to the Apple Watch Series 8. There are no tech specs. What the Apple? Come on, don't make me angry. Apple Watch Ultra overview. That cannot be. Like, gonna get to okay, Apple Watch Series 8 tech specs. Apple is sometimes weird. They sometimes put like those tech specs and like they're just on their support site. So yeah, if we go to here. It does have the Series 8 with the W3 wireless chip. It does have Bluetooth 5.3, and yes, it does have 802.11b, G, and N, N being Wi-Fi 4, and 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, so at least it does that, but that still sucks. And if we go to HomePod 2018 tech specs, yes, there it is. Yes, exactly. What do we have here? We do have, what does Apple mention? We do have 802.11 Wi-Fi AC with MIMO. For those of you who don't know, MIMO is multiple in, multiple out, which is designed to create a more stable and or faster connection. Depends on obviously if you can even like handle the speed of your router maybe. But that is a catastrophic downgrade that was absolutely unnecessary. At least match that. Like, I fully understand that the HomePod is more than maxed out in terms of raw bandwidth with Wi-Fi 4 probably, but definitely with Wi-Fi 5. But the reason why I would like Wi-Fi 6 is because Wi-Fi 6 routers are specifically designed to work better if you have a lot of devices at home. And I think most of us now have more and more devices at home. And that to me is just a little sad, because now you're getting a device in 2023 that does not enable your router to just fully optimize itself for the Wi-Fi 6 devices, for the lowest possible latency. That's just not what I want to see from Apple in a $300, €350 device. Again, it's not that I'm angry here. I understand, like, But there are some downgrades. Now they do specifically mention like a 4-inch high excursion woofer versus a high excursion woofer in general. Like, how do they advertise it here for the speaker? Yeah, they just call it high excursion woofer, but I do believe it's still around the same size. We do have the difference between 5 and 7 tweeters, and also to be mentioned, it does have a difference between microphones of 4 to 6. However, this is one thing that I'm not angry about at all, simply because computational performance for like mics and so has gotten so much better that you can do nowadays with 4 mics with what you used to do with 6 mics. That I'm not angry with. And I do believe that this is probably around the same margins, maybe even slightly lower after all the inflation as the original HomePod was after it was price cut to $300 as it started at $350. But I just don't like getting outdated tech, even if it just is a feature for enthusiasts, or not even a feature, but like a spec point for enthusiasts. And I hope that Apple rectifies it. I know that Apple can take years between upgrading devices. But like now that they basically have it running on the Apple Watch platform, maybe the Series 9 chip, the S9, will support at least 802.11 AC, right? And then Wi-Fi 5.3 will obviously be part of it. But with Bluetooth 5.3, but with Bluetooth, I'm not even angry because Bluetooth is not really used much on the HomePod. It's used for authentication and like for the handoff feature when you're close, when you don't have a U1 device. So that's okay. Again, a little bit of copium and opium, but the reason why I don't think the Apple Watch chip was a very good fit, and not just because of this, but like, and I understand the Apple Watch is really tuned for a lot of those tasks, like sound recognition and handling a lot of sensors. It does obviously a lot of that across the board, but part of it, like, then it needed a new chip that maybe would have then made its way into the next Apple Watch, right? Because the Apple Watch chips have seen incredibly slow upgrades. Basically, from the Series 4, we have gotten like 20% faster since then. We haven't gotten like noticeable new IP. Like, for example, I would have loved if a HomePod, like, I don't need much CPU or GPU power in it, but I would have loved for it to have a neural engine so that a lot of Siri voice recognition can happen right on device. Like, so no Wi-Fi AC, certainly no Wi-Fi AX, no Bluetooth 5.3, no noticeable new AI features, even though like you could argue that like handling more sensors and like recognizing sounds, yes, that's okay. That's not really what I'm looking for as gigantic upgrades. But yeah, so I'm not trying to be angry. I'm actually not trying to talk you guys out of buying one. Because if you are not a hardcore enthusiast, but you maybe are like an Apple ecosystem, like low-key audiophile who just doesn't care about anything but having like an Apple integrated speaker that sounds awesome, right? Then you probably don't care on what Wi-Fi specification it runs and if Siri is handled locally or on the internet, right? You just want something that plays your Apple Music, your podcasts, something that works very well with handoff from iPhone, something that supports the latest HomeKit / Matter tag. So this does all of that, and it, my opinion, from like early listening impressions from what I've read, but it's been limited. It's mostly been like The Verge who got to listen to it a little. Like, it will probably sound just as good as the previous one. The pricing in the area of high-end speakers is fair, but once again, we don't have anything to rectify it being a Wi-Fi / Bluetooth speaker. Now, it does obviously, just as the previous one, just as the HomePod Mini, it does not use Bluetooth for actual like audio throughput. but it does use Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is lower latency, higher quality, all of that. However, there comes a point when you might even want even lower latency and even higher quality. So you might want to connect it to like a high quality DAC. And this simply does not do that. It does not have any extra cables, any extra ports, or anything like that. It is pretty much the original HomePod, but slightly redesigned with some drawbacks, which kind of makes me think if it wouldn't have been better if Apple just kept it based on like the A8 and kept it for longer around, so that people who like me who might have considered like buying a second HomePod wouldn't have to go to the used market, and then like upgraded it to like maybe an A9, right, once that chip like was available basically as like a cheap plug-in. And then maybe an A9 and an 8 HomePod would have been still compatible because they're so similar. And then Apple like maybe makes an A8 HomePod, an A10 HomePod that isn't compatible, but it then is compatible with like an A11, or more likely it would have been like an A8 plus an A10 and then like an A12 and an A14. But then again, nobody's asking to put an A14 into a HomePod. I'm starting to ramble to not get angry again, because I really wanted a new HomePod. I really wanted to make a stereo pair with my original. If this had been an awesome piece of hardware that is completely uncompromised, it maybe been like $50 cheaper, or even the same price but really uncompromised, like Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.3, like on-device Siri and stuff like that. Then I would have probably just taken my HomePod, given it to my mom or somebody who also has like an Apple TV and can use it well, and then just bit the bullet, spend $700, and gave Apple my money basically. Shut up, give me a HomePod, and take my money. So yeah, I'm not buying one, but it does get like a light recommendation for me to anybody who doesn't either have a HomePod Biggie or like has a stereo pair of HomePods, of the original HomePod, and now wants like a new HomePod somewhere in their home that still sounds better than a HomePod Mini. Or maybe you have like several TVs and this will be like your second stereo pair. So it still works, and in my opinion it is probably unrivaled as an actual smart speaker. Like the amount of and I don't mean like, oh, Google Assistant can like give you like a better like experience in terms of you ask it like obscure stuff. No, like as an actual smart speaker, just a speaker that does basic Siri stuff, or basically the stuff that you are most likely to want, like alarms, timers, calendar entries, responding to messages, intercom functionality, even taking calls, especially in the Apple ecosystem. I think this is still better than anything from like Sonos when it comes to like a standalone thing. Obviously, if you want to configure a full like high-end like home theater setup with like a big sound bar and like 4 speakers fully around you, that might still be better, but then it's also going to get much more expensive. And it is actually kind of interesting, because I would have expected for Apple to find some kind of way to like double and triple dip, but I honestly don't know if like the chip is capable of that. And that would have been if they had like supported like a 4 HomePod setup, right? Like maybe 2 right in front of the TV, 2 behind you. Maybe it supports like 2 big HomePods and 2 HomePod minis. But then the HomePod mini would have need to be upgraded. So I'm rambling once again, and I apologize, and I know this video is probably gonna not do well at all, because who cares about HomePod? Who cares about a random guy's opinion about HomePod? Who cares about the opinion of an enthusiast who doesn't like what Wi-Fi standard a speaker uses? I know that I am weird. I know that this video has gone on for too long, but I appreciate anybody who later tunes in, because we do not have live listeners. I know this is a very weird time for me to be streaming, so I'm not angry here. But anybody who is interested in my content in general, check out my latest MacBook Pro Mac Mini reaction. That was much more positive. Probably much more positive in relation to the industry than this one is, because that is probably even a little more negative. Like, I've seen a couple of videos that say like, oh, the new HomePod is weird, which is why this video is called The New HomePod is Strange, because I didn't want to double down on the same titles. But yeah, that will basically it for me from today, or at least for now. Who knows, maybe I will make a video in the next 21 hours and then it will still be today. But I love you all. I hope you leave comments on what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to see next. This is MarkTech saying thank you once again, promising more content than ever before.